I wish we'd had this when I was in college. I could have sold my physics notebooks. That would have been huge.
No, but this is just for sports paraphernalia.
Yeah, you have to be in sports ball, Jon.
I thought it was for college mathletes.
What?
Sorry.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Another Bite, where we rewatch some of the most innovative and intriguing pitches from Shark Tank. I'm Jorie, and I'm joined by Ariel.
Hey everyone.
And Jon.
How's it going?
This is Hart Week. And no, I don't mean humble, empathetic, adaptable, remarkable, and transparent. I mean Kevin Hart, duh. Today, we're looking at 3 products that may or may not have caught the attention of the actor and comedian. Who will secure a deal? Time will tell. But first, a word from the folks that pay the bills. You know it, we know it. Next year is creeping up quick. If you want to win inside your niche in 2024, you need tech that puts you in the pilot seat. The new HubSpot Sales Hub will help you close out the year strong and kickstart your success in 2024. Teams can collaborate on every inch of the customer journey and keep operations running smoothly with comprehensive prospecting workspace and powerful sales analytics tools that keep data connected across teams. And with over 1,400 integrations, there's a ton of ways to mix in new features. So finish out Q4 strong and gear up for the new year with HubSpot Sales Hub. Learn more at hubspot.com/sales. So first in the tank, we have Black Sands. And Black Sands comes to us from Manuel, Giselle, and Tunis. And they are coming into the tank asking for $500,000 for 5% equity stake in their company. That is a $10 million valuation. And the problem that they're trying to solve for is, despite the seemingly endless amount of content, be it TV, movies, anime, comics, etc., it's still really hard to find content and characters that really represent the Black community and their historical achievements. So their solution is Black Sands Entertainment, which is a Black-owned publishing house. And it started with a flagship book that is also called Black Sands, not to be confused with the name of the publishing house. And it's Black Sands and the Seven Kingdoms. And this was really their kind of jumpstart into the media space. But thinking about our product, thinking about our founders and their initial proposition and pitch, what are our initial thoughts of Black Sands?
I think it's amazing to provide a platform for Black creators to elevate a lot of the parts of history that do get excluded from a lot of textbooks or when you're growing up. So I love the fact that it's kind of a blend based off of nonfiction, fiction. And I think that's such a difficult balance to strike when it comes to books and garnering that interest, more so than it is just for your typical Hunger Games or other fiction books that come out within the market.
Yeah. I mean, to build on what you said, Ariel, I think representation matters so much in media. It's got amazing societal benefits. I think everybody just straight up deserves to see themselves represented in culture. And I think everybody deserves to be exposed to people who are different than them. And so from that perspective, already, I really like it. Beyond that, though, it's also great for business. Underserved markets have tremendous upside potential as a business. That's one thing that struck me right from the start is this is amazing because it creates an opportunity for more people to see themselves represented in mass media, but it's also has the potential to be just an absolutely incredible business because that community is just underserved historically.
But yeah, let's dig into those numbers. They are doing really fantastic with their sales to date, right? So if the standard average unit sales is around 10,000, then Black Sands is kind of smashing it out of the park because as of the time of the pitch, they were on pace to make 120,000 units of sale by the end of the year. So incredibly high demand for this comic book series and arguably the other 12 series that they had signed on to their brand as of the time of the pitch.
Yeah, and they're doing a good margin on it. Their comic book business is running an 85% margin.
It's insane.
They're making really good money here. It's a good business.
Definitely.
I'm remembering the fact, this pitch happened in January of 2022. It is perfect timing, Jon, to your point, because we see more things from Marvel having more multiracial characters or telling stories about LGBTQIA main characters. So there definitely is that appetite in the market to have more representation for some of these underrepresented groups. And they all all did it in-house. I think it was just that one animator
that is
they
impressive.
hired.
It's an impressive team.
Is like insane to me, the amount of success that they've had, just given how early on they kind of are within the process.
The real question to me is, can this continue to see the success? And this basically, I think, boils down to how good the IP is. Like, how good are these characters? I almost wish that their pitch had been way more focused on exposing us to their multiverse or whatever it is, to actually help us understand, like, the richness of the universe they've created, because it has a lot of parallels to Disney to me. One of the business books I enjoyed the most during the pandemic was Bob Iger's Ride of a Lifetime. Really interesting book about the story of Disney and like what he did when he took over Disney. And he basically went on a content buying spree, right? He bought Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel. He bought Muppets too, which gotta love the Muppets. But he did it for two reasons, right? Number one is that he understood fundamentally that the unbundling of media meant that in order to like get distribution with consumers, like you needed content to do it. That's the only reason people will subscribe to your direct-to-consumer streaming business in the future. And the other was because if you have great IP, you can create lots and lots and lots and lots of derivative content pieces. And we see both of those playing out with Disney right now. And so I see parallels here. And so to me, it kind of boils down to like, how good is this IP? Like, how interesting are these characters? How much depth will people want to watch spin-off series? Will they want to buy merch? Will they want to do all these things? And that was the only thing that I wish the pitch had that it didn't.
I don't think it's necessarily whether or not this can be an IP or like a franchise that gets blown out of the water. I actually think there is that piece of the historical context of like, these are based off of Egyptian history before like slavery happened. I think that component is what makes it kind of stand on its own, as opposed to here's where we could take it, more so here's kind of what we're trying to shape that narrative and that storytelling. So I do think that's like a very important piece to kind of elevate when we think about scalability.
When Kevin Hart, who was the guest shark, as the intro kind of alluded to, started to really dig into like what the money was for, we got the first hint of a little bit of vagueness on the part of our founder. As they start to dig into like, what is the plan behind this money? What is the strategy behind this money? We started to kind of hit this vagueness that left me a little concerned because like, yes, we got the answer that the money was to hire artists, but I really wish that we had also started to get into the nitty gritty of like how we're going to continue to market this and scale it, because it's clear that they've done something really successful. You know, in the first year, they were at $40,000 in 2017, and they're at $800,000 in 2022. I would have loved to see that story of like how this really started to unfold, and then like dig into how they're going to continue to scale this, like knowing that Black Sands is clearly resonating with an audience already. So that was my only bit of critique, where I was like, I want to know more about the business side, as exciting as the characters are.
Yeah, I felt that vagueness too. And it actually kind of ended up underscoring a little bit of what Kevin Hart could offer.
Yeah.
I think this is an incredibly talented creative team who have come up with a point of view and an approach to creating content that clearly is resonating in its target market. And now the question is just, how do they scale it? What do they need to do next? And I was trying to look into like, how much does it cost to like make and distribute content? And it turns out like somewhere between 35 and 40% of the costs that go into making a film, you know, is actually the distribution of it, right? Like, how do you get it into the world? And so you're like, well, it's going to be like hard to build that from scratch. It's going to take an exceptional amount of money. And even on the production side, getting access to a network of creators that are part of Kevin Hart's network would both just be incredible value that will save them a ton of time and a ton of money.
I think they should have came in definitely offering more than 5%. It's like they need a partner to help them think outside of the box. So that's the only reason why I was like, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Totally fair. This was one of those situations where the founders clearly had a specific shark in mind, and like knowing that he's such like a distributor powerhouse and has a lot of that like production prowess behind him, that does make sense. If they were like always looking to partner with him, honestly, his team is going to figure it out.
Right.
I do wish they had been more like blunt about admitting that. What they should have said is, we want this money mainly so that we can go deep with a partner who can bring us the following expertise, which we know we need.
But even like given the valuation problems, Mark actually kind of jumped in on this. I don't know, like I just saw his interest kind of come out of nowhere. So it was really interesting for Mark to be like, hey, like Kevin, you figure out what you're good at. I'll figure out what I'm good at. And, you know, we'll partner together on this deal.
Can I just take a minute to acknowledge the deadly duo that is Mark Cuban and Kevin Hart throughout all of these segments? The minute that they start collaborating together, it's like game over for all the other
like
sharks.
no other sharks can compete.
Yeah. I love that Kevin's always willing to do a partnership, though. I feel like I could go get a partnership with Kevin. I feel like I just want to like pop out. Next time he's on Shark Tank, I'm going to like stick my head out and be like, Kevin, let's do this deal together. And I'll be like, all right, Jon.
So we had a bit of back and forth between the dynamic duo that is Mark and Kevin and our founders. Ultimately, though, even though the founders tried to kind of lower the equity on the ask, Mark and Kevin asked for a 30% stake in their company for a $500,000 deal. And ultimately, that was the deal that was sealed with the founders. And I sort of get it, right? Like in terms of partnerships, like both Mark and Kevin bring really unique offers as investors to the company. So I could sort of see where they were coming from in terms of like, hey, we're going to do some work for you. You got to make it worth our while.
Yeah, I think the 30%'s fair.
All right. So this pitch was back in January of 2022. So admittedly, it's not been that long. Okay. As of October 2022, the lifetime sales of Black Sands was up to 2 million.
Ooh,
but exciting update is that Kevin Hart is actually planning to grow this franchise into a TV series, which is something that the founders had mentioned that they were aspiring to. And he's actually hoping to endorse a feature film for Black Sands.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Definitely some of those aspirations coming into fruition after this Shark Tank deal and I guess like deal with this dream shark.
That's incredible.
All right, so pivoting just a bit, next in the tank, we've got a product in more of the health and wellness space. Here we have Transformation Factory, and Transformation Factory comes to us from founder Alexio, and Alexio's asking $500,000 for 5% in his company, which is a $10 million valuation. We're going to see some valuations go up, my friends. And, you know, we actually get a bit of an origin story with this pitch. So the founder himself used to be 500 pounds, and was told that he wouldn't see 30. And as part of his transformation, he found this ingredient that contained all of these minerals like zinc and magnesium that humans really need in their diet, but sometimes are quite deficient in. So this has led to the inspiration behind his product, Transformation Factory, which is, quote, a mouth-watering sea moss gel. When you think of gel, it's not like the soft gel pills that you see like certain vitamins take. It's actually like a marmalade or a jam.
It's like jelly.
Yeah, like a jam.
Yeah, it's like a jelly jar. Really, the point of this product is like to give people access to this nutritional ingredient so they too can be the best versions of themselves. So thinking about our product and our pitch, initial thoughts?
I mean, what an incredible entrepreneur. Yeah. So one of the things you, I think, bet on if you're an investor in companies and in entrepreneurs is the team. You like invest in the people, and you kind of just have to figure out if those people are the type of people who can persevere and like find a way. I can't think of a better tell about whether someone can persevere and find a way than a person who lost 300 pounds in a weight loss journey. That must have been so incredibly difficult. And
even just the mental stamina of that, right?
100%. The mental stamina, the ability to keep going, the motivation, like the ability to envision the future. So hard. You should have just walked in, told the story, and gotten a check and just left.
I am not going to lie. I will admit I had some healthy skepticism at first. Anytime there's any product that has claims, I'm always skeptical about it.
You have to be.
But I feel like this pitch actually did a really good job of, quantifying a little bit more of some of the value that there actually is in the nutrition in sea moss. I felt like I learned a lot, but I definitely was a little bit skeptical at first.
I have to ask though, did you feel like you got the education you needed to truly be like, I believe in sea moss? Or did he just repeat the phrase, it contains 90% of the minerals nutrients that we need in our diet? Like, I will admit, he said that at least 5 times in the pitch with no further backing. So was it repetition that got you, or was it the storytelling?
Jorie, what about all those minerals, though? Are you getting 99% of your minerals every day?
I happen to take magnesium, thank you. So,
okay. Why not take it in jelly form right from the sea?
True, especially when it's so mouthwatering. Comes in mango flavor.
Okay. Exactly.
So maybe it was the repetition, but the sales speak for themselves too. And the fact that he was only in business for 11 months.
He's found an underserved market and he has found product market fit. That is for sure.
Okay.
There's an audience and it's not me.
Yeah.
The audience. Let's talk about that for a second, though, because there's sometimes that like the product is also something that we need to think about in its contemporary stage. So this was like a pitch back in 2020 in May. So it's also really important to know that this is a product that is like striking when the iron's hot, because it's worth noting that in February 2022, Kim Kardashian went on this like huge Twitter campaign about how she had just started drinking these sea moss smoothies. And in the point in time that this pitch was happening, that was the new superfood fad. So sea moss, I don't know like how much it's still a part of everyone's conversation in terms of superfoods, but that was what that was. It was the new kale.
Yeah, because Kevin did mention at one point, he's like, I know about this. I bought this beforehand. I know that this is like more of like a cultural product, but it seems like there was a pretty strong level of awareness.
That's also true.
If it happened, you know, after Kim Kardashian's kind of push for it, totally makes sense.
You know, if Kim Kardashian's talking about sea moss and you happen to be at the right place at the right time, you deserve to be able to grow your business on that. That's incredible.
It also is important to note for our viewers out here, there's never been a clinical trial on sea moss. So like we're saying it's good product. We're not necessarily endorsing it. Use at your own discretion.
Yeah, use at your own
What are you
risk.
saying? We're not medical experts. You shouldn't listen to 3 marketers at HubSpot about whether or not.
Quick disclaimer. Yeah. Anywho, but yes, it's a timely product, but let's dig into those numbers a bit. Because like, as you mentioned, Ariel, like this company is already successful by the time they're pitching to the sharks.
Yeah. So I think he said it all started pretty organically, that he was sneaking it into his grandmother's smoothies and posting it online to gain traction. Now, there's a number of different ways you can gain traction: through shock and awe, through pranks, through jokes. But this is one of those ways I just did not settle right with me. But good for him. That 800% growth that he saw after getting the presence online, running ads, seemed to work in this instance.
Yeah. And by the time he's in the Shark Tank, $3.5 million of lifetime sales when he started his business 11 months ago.
Yeah,
like
That's a lot of money. Most people come on the show and they've done like maybe like 100K in sales, like 200K, 300K.
And he's profitable.
Yeah, he's got 35% net margins. So he's made over $1 million already on this product. He's got money to invest in the business.
And he's still direct to consumer too, right? So it's not even in retail.
And he's still direct to consumer.
Right.
Yeah.
Knowing that this is a product that like potentially was successful, at least in some kind of way, based on like the virality of sea moss at the time, how would you two market it though to make sure that it was defensible in the long run?
Well, I think no matter what you do, you are going to want to ensure that you still continue to have some social proof element of your campaign. Like the thing is like, I don't think the average consumer would hear about sea moss and think, well, that was so like 2020. I think most would think like, oh yeah, sea moss. I've actually been like meaning to try it. I think it's like a real thing. So I think you want to have a strategy that both keeps it top of mind and reminds people about it who maybe haven't tried. And then my guess is you have to do a lot of content marketing. The transformation factory in his story is probably powerful enough that he can build his own brand around it. And I would actually take the Sharks' money and build a media team for him and his company and go like super hard at that.
My initial thought went to, how do we incorporate sea moss more into like other foods? Could this be mixed with like a vinaigrette that you put on top of a salad? So I think even just like videos on Instagram Reels or TikToks of like just making general food that everyone eats and adding this as an ingredient, as opposed to like leaning in heavily on like the influencer side that can cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars pretty quickly.
I'd love to know actually what the LTV of a customer is here.
Yes.
It would dictate a lot about how much he could pay in marketing. I think that's one of the big questions I have is basically like, how much can he invest in acquiring customers? Can he invest a lot? Because it turns out once people start taking sea moss, they never get off it and they will be like a repeat customer and buy 2 new jars every month. Or is it like you really actually get an average of 1.4 jars per customer you acquire, in which case like, yikes, you can't pay much and you've got to really rely more on the virality and content.
Well, there were a couple things that the Sharks really loved about this product. You know, you had a founder that was still the sole owner, even after all this success. You had a lot of revenue, a lot of cash flow, a product that, according to the sharks was very tasty. So I say, quote, mouth-watering. They confirmed, at least the sharks did, that it was tasty. And it caught the attention of a couple different sharks. This was a case where, sometimes sharks themselves have to learn that you got to snap something up while it's good, because we had Kevin Hart first team up with Barbara, and then Mr. Wonderful came into the game. But then, that moment that Mark was interested in partnering up with Kevin, no one could beat it. So ultimately, the deal was made with Kevin and Mark for $600,000 for a 20% stake in the company. And again, we see that power duo, right? Like Mark and Kevin looking to distribute some CMOS. So both the founder and the shark were able to partner up together, even despite a bidding war. So, given what we know about CMOS, would you try it?
I would try it. Why not?
I'll eat anything.
We need a tasting.
I just don't know what you pair it with. Do you put it on bread?
You should put it on toast.
On toast?
Or just eat it.
Just eat it out of the jar.
Clearly smoothies.
No, it has to be with something. I just can't eat something that's spreadable out of the jar.
Why not?
It's weird to me.
You've never done that?
No, it's weird to me. I don't know.
So, after airing on Shark Tank, the company did 5 months worth of sales in 3 days.
Wow.
Right? So they absolutely exploded on the CMOS scene. 2022 sales were estimated to be $4 million. So very much still profitable as a company and scaling. The one thing I will note, sometimes, I shoot myself in the foot because I get so excited about these products and then I look them up on Google. Yeah. And
Jorie, don't look at the reviews.
I know. But the thing is,
bad?
I have to, because that's how, as a consumer, I really start to rate products. And maybe that's bad, but I try to do that word of mouth research. Okay. So here's the thing. It has nothing to do with the taste. The problem with the company these days is that they're so popular that they cannot meet their current demand. So the backlog of orders is currently months and months and months long. And so you have a lot of friction in the experience because people are waiting to get their delicious CMOS. So it's like you got so much excitement, but they're not matching the demand. So Kevin Hart, Mark, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Blew it up too far.
You need to help them scale, get more moss.
Yeah.
But apparently, for the people that do get it, tastes really good. So,
all right.
Bonus.
You set that up as though it was going to be a 1-star, turns out the CMOS is nasty. Come on, Jorie.
I am here for the emotional roller coaster, right? You never know.
Ariel and I you saw our faces dropped. It was awful.
No,
CMOS!
What's an episode without some drama? So, love it. Okay. All right, so third in the tank, we have the Player's Trunk. And this comes to us from founders Austin and Jason. And they come asking the Sharks for $650,000 for a 5% stake in their company. This is a $13 million valuation. That's punchy. That's a lot. So the problem that the Player's Trunk is trying to solve is that it's very difficult for D1 athletes to monetize their personal brands. Essentially, until recently, a college could sell replicas of athletes' jerseys and things and make a profit. And the player themselves actually received no compensation for these sales. So now there's definitely some things shifting. And this is really where the Player's Trunk is trying to help. So it's essentially a website where it allows players that are either currently in college or post-college to sell their name, image, and likeness. So it's allowing athletes to really monetize and grow their personal brand.
I wish we'd had this when I was in college. I could have sold my physics notebooks. That would have been huge.
No, but this is just for sports paraphernalia.
Yeah, you have to be in sports ball, Jon.
I thought it was for college mathletes.
What?
Sorry.
Wait, okay. Were you a math major?
I was a physics major.
Oh, nice. And ended up in marketing. You can do whatever you set your mind to, kids. Turning it back to the Player's Trunk, thinking about our pitch, what are your thoughts about this product?
5% for $650K for what is essentially an e-commerce platform. When you really think about it, they're evaluating themselves like they're a technology company in some ways. And it was way too much of a stretch coming out of the gate. I just didn't understand, what was that $650K really needed for? And how are they going to scale with it? Because there's one thing to offer the merchandise itself. It's another thing to connect athletes with the brands that actually do the deals so they can continue to make money.
Yeah, I mean, they're pitching themselves as a marketplace. right?
Yeah.
Some of the biggest companies that have been around in the past, 10, 15 years have been marketplaces. eBay, Airbnb, Uber, all these companies are marketplaces and investors love them because you can basically facilitate transactions and take a slice on them. And many of them are kind of like winner take all market, so if you can get in and you can move fast enough as a marketplace, you can just become known as the default place that people go to be an auction site. Like eBay is still the default auction site because it was a winner takes all market and they just like dominated on it. And so I think they have positioned themselves as a marketplace. And really the question is just like, can they be the winning marketplace or not?
That's what caused me a little pause, though, because I actually kept going back to eBay in my head. Like, right? Like, if you have an athlete that has a massive social following, there's nothing stopping them from like listing their own jerseys on eBay.
Yeah.
Or just like a different auction site. But here we see this instance where it's like their main differentiator is that unlike other college sports marketplaces, they're allowing like vintage items to be sold where they're only taking 20%. But the current athletes, it seems like, get hit with like a 40% take from their cut. So I really couldn't understand why athletes would choose this marketplace.
Yeah.
Like, what's the differentiator here? Like, what sets them apart really, besides the fact that it's current college students talking to existing college students, and they seem to think that their youthful influence is like endlessly going to create relationships for them.
I mean, every marketplace, it's two-sided, and two-sided marketplaces can be really hard to mobilize. And so that kind of is the main question to me. And by the way, this marketplace really only takes off if you get the players on it.
Yeah. It's very
right?
dependent.
Like in theory, if you had all the consumers there, then the players would come and that eventually will be a flywheel. But to get started, you actually have to have enough players on that consumers will go to it to buy things. And their answer to that was just like, we're young and we've got friends.
You're not going to be young forever.
Yep, that's that college naivety.
But I do wish they'd had some point of view on like what it was about their product that would actually allow them to mobilize with the players. Like I would probably consider taking a much smaller cut from the players. I would do like a whole bunch of things just to like make it incredibly attractive and incentivize players to actually want to get on board, because I think that's the winning formula for them.
Yeah.
The thing is, too, about these athletes is like, if we're talking just like college athletes, they have like a 4-year life cycle, right? So even if there are 800 players currently, you have to keep building into those relationships. It's not just like you have 800 really awesome people and you can wipe your hands of it.
Yeah. I mean, if I were them, I'd be super targeted. What I would probably do is I would use Google search trends to actually figure out which players people are actually looking for jerseys on. And I would create incredible incentives to get them on the platform, basically give them a huge cut upfront, maybe even give some of them equity just to be like part of the company, which seemed like maybe was a little bit of what they were doing with some of the co-founders. I'd just sign exclusivity deals to get them that preferred cut and all that stuff. And I would like just try and lock them in. And that's what I would do.
It just seems like based on how they were talking about them building the relationships, they like visit the college campus and like hope that they can draw people in.
I think them leaning into the name, image, and likeness angle was probably one of the worst things they can do. I think if they leaned in towards just being a true marketplace, so maybe they resell things from celebrities and athletes, but I think they were trying really hard to kind of tie into, hey, this is an opportunity in the market, but they're not offering, again, what that differentiator is or what that incentive is for athletes. So I actually think they'd have a lot more success if they weren't so niche in their approach.
College students think about only college, tell you what.
I hear you on that, Ariel. That's an interesting debate to have is like, do you want to be verticalized or horizontal? Do you want to go deep on a niche? I might argue for the niche strategy. Like, I think if you're a college player and you're trying to figure out who to sign up with, like signing up with a generic platform that may or may not become known for selling college sports memorabilia, I would probably want to go with someone who was known just for that thing. So I don't know. I think them saying this is what we do and we're the best at it, and we're going to like spend every minute of our time getting as many buyers for your goods on this platform as possible and making the platform as sticky as possible, I'd probably want to sign up with them.
I'm the opposite because they're not established yet. I'd be more prone if like Amazon offered a program for college like students specifically within their ecosystem, that would make sense. And I feel like a lot of marketplaces, the ones that have done well are the ones that are horizontal.
I mean, if you just look at like Uber, they were super verticalized.
Yeah.
Uber basically was like, we're going to do rides. And now they're just starting to push into other verticals. They're starting to do deliveries. They're starting to do, food. They're starting to do other things. And so I don't know.
One thing that was interesting, though, is like they focused entirely on how they were going to acquire people to sell goods, but not how they were going to acquire or get like brand recognition for people to buy them. And like they completely didn't talk about that acquisition strategy. And I guess like it relies entirely on like influencer marketing, where it's like, I suppose if a player has fans, they can find out that they're auctioning in this particular place. But it also like seemed like a kind of gap in their strategy to not be able to definitively tell like how they were going to spread the word to the buyers, which then keeps that flywheel going of acquiring more sellers.
Yeah, that's a good point. They were more focused on athlete awareness as opposed to like the actual end consumer that would bring in their revenue for them awareness.
Yeah. But it's like a field of dreams. Like if you build it, they will come, in theory. I think there's like definitely a time to market thing here, which is like, okay, we need to have enough domain authority and a savvy enough ads team and a savvy enough social team such that anytime a big moment in college sports happens, we've made a deal with that player as quickly as possible. Their stuff is up on our site and we're out promoting it to everybody who's in that market. Like, I think that's probably the winning strategy for them, which is why I see the value in getting as many players as possible kind of locked in and becoming known for that.
Yeah.
So one other thing that kind of needs to be talked about is their valuation. We started being like, oh, is this valuation fair or not?
13 million, need I remind you.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of money.
It's a lot.
And it's something that the Sharks absolutely hated. We talked about if you build it, they will come. Yeah, that's not the case for Sharks.
Yeah, this comes back into the where do valuations come from? Is it based off of what investors previously want? Is it the blue sky, like upside momentum that you see that you're trying to sell in your company for? So I think this is a great example of like they were very bullish, but I would have evaluated them at like 2.5 million, like not 13. Yeah. I feel like that settles a little bit better for me.
The only justification they really had is they had raised like 1.25 million in venture capital. But other than that, when the Sharks were like, okay, but like, what is it about you that makes you worth 13 million? This is where honestly, some of the like inexperience started to show, because they were like, because we just are. We are a $13 million company.
Yeah. They were a little misleading in their pitch because, they talked about what they had sold on the platform and they basically said, hey, we've had $1.3 million in sales. The thing about that, though, when you're evaluating a marketplace, like that would be generally known as the GMV, like the gross merchandise volume or the gross bookings. That's not actually what their revenue is, right? So what they are tracking is how much money people have spent buying things in their marketplace, not this cut of that they took as revenue. And so I think in reality, they've only made like $200,000 in revenue, which makes this valuation even more difficult. Like you could argue, hey, it's a marketplace. We've got momentum. We've got some revenue growth. And so we should get, a 5 to 10x revenue multiple or something like that. And I think back when they were fundraising with VC in 2021 and, the government in the US had printed trillions of dollars and everyone had money to spend investing in things and rates were zero. Like, yeah, you probably could have gotten like a 15 or 20x revenue multiple on some seed round or something. And now it's just crashed back to earth. They've got to take it down around here.
Okay, so they caught some flack for their valuation, but Kevin and Mark were both very much interested in trying to help them out.
Again.
And that's where I think the bullishness kind of actually worked against these founders, because they were willing to offer $650,000 for 30%. And they were willing to invest and like make this marketplace work. But because that devalued, I think, the company more than our founders thought it was worth, we ultimately didn't actually end up with a deal. They turned them down. Like Mark, the sports guy, and Kevin Hart, just Kevin Hart.
It's a terrible decision on their part.
And I mean, yeah, Mr. Wonderful definitely called them bozos for not taking that deal. They were like, you're going to regret it. Try explaining this to your friends, which that wasn't the most mature response. But, Mr. Wonderful gets spicy.
You can never get down on an entrepreneur for saying there's only so much of this company I'm willing to give up at this point in time.
That's true.
Right? Because if you play the clock out, let's say they are successful and they have to do another big fundraise. Let's say they want to raise $20 million in a year and a half because they've been so successful. Like gosh, well, now they got to give away like another 40% of the company. I would imagine maybe their VCs influence them a certain way, and VCs would have a strong incentive not to take a down round. And so I hope that they considered the incentives of their advisors carefully. And I can't help but think that having Mark Cuban as a large owner of this company would have increased the odds of its success like 10 to 20x. I just can't help but think that. I appreciate that they didn't want to give up that much equity, but I think they might have had a more guaranteed rate of success in being the marketplace for this with Mark and Kevin's backing.
I don't know. I think they were very foolish to walk away and should have been willing to give up more and say, sorry, VC capitalists, like, this is what's best for us.
A bit of a company update. As we mentioned, no Shark Tank deal, womp womp. But actually, the Player's Trunk has added some limited edition playing cards and an auction website to auction off signed gear. So no word on like what they're actually bringing in every year in terms of revenue, but it still exists as a company, and they seem to be like trying to expand on the types of goods. But yeah, no word on how much they regret it or not. Maybe they don't. We could be the fools and they could be making so much money.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs protect their equity fiercely and end up being very successful. I think they just have to really believe in what their advantages are and be sure they go after them as aggressively as possible.
That makes sense. All right. So on today's episode of Another Bite, we had Heart Week. Maybe that makes our golden bite a golden heart. But we had 3 products. We had Black Sands Entertainment, the Transformation Factory, and the Player's Trunk. And if you could only choose one of these companies, who are you giving the golden heart, the golden bite to?
Yeah, I'm going with Transformation Factory. I just would bet on that entrepreneur like 99 out of 100
in that
times.
Story.
Yeah, hell yeah.
As tempting as it is for me to take the chaotic route, I'm going to agree with Jon and also give my golden heart to the Transformation Factory too, just because there's so much upside between the product itself and the entrepreneur.
Well, our hearts are aligned on this one because I think that ultimately the Transformation Factory, in terms of like a product I could see myself actually using, but then also just like how good that brand can be and like where that company could go as such an amazing entrepreneur. Honestly, no contest. You got to give it to them.
We should all try to place orders and see how long it takes and who receives their order first.
I don't know if that will positively help their sales, Ariel. Because you've got like some people waiting like 4 to 5 months for like a single jar.
Wait,
so
that long?
Yeah. You got some 1 stars to sift through before you get to the 5s. But you know what I do for this podcast. Today's episode was written and produced by the incomparable Matthew Brown. Additional support comes from Melanie Romero. If you like the show, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody. Because I mean, I like hanging out with you. Do you like hanging out with me? What do you say, Barb?
I'm out.
Okay, rude. You can follow and subscribe to the show wherever fine podcasts are found. That's everywhere, in case you're wondering. Every podcast player, we're there. That's it from me, for real this time. We'll see you next week in the tank for another bite.